Now, there are different tactics and techniques on where an attacker can perform different types of DNS footprinting, reconnaissance, or enumeration, right? Now, one of those techniques is by using a zone transfer attack. And what a zone transfer is a mechanism used by DNS servers to update another DNS server by transferring the contents of their database, and basically what we call a zone in a DNS implementation. Now, before we go over the DNS zone transfer attacks, I want for you to understand that DNS is structured as a hierarchy, so that whenever you request DNS information, your request is actually passed up this hierarchy until a DNS server is found that can resolve the domain name request. So for example, in this topology or this diagram that I have here, you have the root DNS server, and there's several root DNS servers across the world on the internet. And then you have top level domains like .org, .gov, .edu, .mail, and so on. Right? For example, I actually own these two domains, hacker.org and secretcorp.org, that we have been using in this training, pervasively. Now, in this case, of course, I register these domains with a register. In my case, it was actually Google, right? And then, there are authoritative name servers that will be able to resolve the hacker.org or secretcorp.org or pearson.com, cisco.com, etc., right? So you have to understand this hierarchy in order to understand some of the other concepts that I'm about to actually cover in the next few minutes. Now, there are many different utilities that you can use for name resolution. For example, you have the nslookup command, and I can do nslookup to hacker.org. And you see that, the server that replied to me is the 208.67.222.222, which is actually OpenDNS. And then I have several non-authoritative answers. And basically what that means is that, you got the answers from a secondary DNS server. In this case, actually, hacker.org has 4 different IP addresses and is doing DNS round robin. As a matter of fact, hacker.org is hosted in GitHub pages, and these are just the GitHub pages IP addresses, right? So you see how easy it is to do a quick DNS resolution. You can also use other commands like the host command. So I'm going to do it to the same domain. And in this case, you're getting a little bit more information. You're getting the 4 IP addresses that you got before, but also information about how mail, so email, is actually handled there. And these are what we call the MX records, right? Of course, this training is not going to go into the very details of DNS and DNS resolution. We expect that you have at least some familiarity with that. We're going to be explaining different types of attacks that you can perform for DNS enumeration. And one of them, as I cover, is the DNS zone transfer attack. And basically, what this zone transfer process starts with is that the secondary name server, so remember that we had 2 DNS servers. So I'll put here DNS1 for my first DNS server and DNS2. DNS1 is my primary. DNS2 is my secondary. The secondary name server starts the process by requesting an SOA record. And SOA stands for the Start of Authority Record. And basically, it is a type of resource in the DNS system containing administrative information about that zone, right? Now, the primary then checks the list for authorized servers and may determine that DNS server 2, it is indeed allowed to perform this type of queries, right? And make sure that the server is on the list. And then the SOA record is then sent to the secondary server. Now, the secondary must then check the SOA record to see whether there's a match against the SOA that it already maintains. Now, if the SOA is a match, the process stops there. However, if the SOA has a serial number that is higher than the secondary will have, then it will need an update. Now, if an update is required, then the secondary name server will then send all zone, and yes, it's X for zone, transfer record or request to the primary server. And that's actually, I know that the acronyms actually don't match specifically, but that's what it stands for. All zone transfer request to the primary server. Now, upon the receipt of that AXFR, the primary server then will actually send the entire zone file to the secondary name server, right? So in other words, the entire information about the database and that zone to that secondary DNS server. One thing to highlight in here is that a zone transfer is unlike a normal lookup in that the user is actually attempting to retrieve a copy of the entire zone file for a domain, not just the information for just one domain and the IP addresses. Now, the attacker can get a lot of information about the organization, using a zone transfer attack. Now, you should not perform any DNS zone transfer to any domains that you do not own or you do not have permission to. Now, 2 domains that you're seeing in the screen are allowed, and is a project of an organization called DigiNinja, and where they have 2 domains that you can actually use to practice your skills in a safe environment like this, right? Now, the command that you're seeing is the dig command, and you probably already have used the dig command in Linux for just normal DNS resolution. But as you see here, we're actually using the dig command with the AXFR for the zone transfer, and we have 2 domains, the @ nsztm1.digininja, and then zone transfer me. And basically what we're doing is actually we're trying to simulate a zone transfer between DigiNinja and that specific zone to zonetransfer.me. Now, if I execute this command, you see that there's a whole bunch of different information coming back that typically you will not get in a normal DNS resolution. And of course, in this case, we're actually getting the whole database of that fictitious zone in this playground, of these 2 domains. And again, do not do this in a real DNS, name that you do not own. Don't be doing this to your corporate environment or any things like that. You can get absolutely into a lot of trouble. Now, again, if you see all this type of information, definitely an attacker can leverage this to perform other attacks, do further reconnaissance, and of course, apply different tactics and techniques to compromise different systems within our organization.